So we are speaking now to Director of the Brookings Africa Growth Initiative, Professor Pierre Nguimkeu. Let me just ask you to direct. I do apologize. I thought I'd got in this right. Professor, a very good evening to you. May I please ask you to give me the correct pronunciation of your surname?
Thank you very much, first of all, to having me. Pierre Nguimkeu. That's the way it is pronounced.
Okay. Thank you so much for speaking to us. Apologies for that. So let's just first start with the salient points of the Foresight Africa report. What is it aiming to achieve?
So it's aiming to inform policy, propose actionable policies that decision maker can use to address some of the top priorities of our continent.
Mm-hmm. And some of your key takeaways from this year's findings?
Yeah, so the first thing is that we started by recognizing that 2026 is going to be a defining moment for African countries, especially because of the convergence of global and domestic forces that have placed Africa's economic trajectory at a crossroads. And then we are looking at both pressures and opportunities. So pressures in financial and foreign finance that has been contracted, reducing concessional finance, capital needs that are rising, especially for infrastructure, energy, and social services. And more than half of low-income countries in Africa face a high risk of debt distress. And job creation for youth is something that is keeping us awake because it's growing and it's not keeping pace with the labor force. But there are opportunities, and we see, for example, that the demographic dynamism of the growing workforce is an opportunity for Africa, resource endowment and potential for value addition, entrepreneurial energy, and technology adoption. These are some of the things that we look at as great opportunity for Africa, including, of course, the African Continental Free Trade Area.
We're just speaking to the executive director of Oxfam, who's at the World Economic Forum, and we're just speaking about what the conversations ought to be. But one of the points that he was making really was about the need for resource dependence. And the conversation is growing in Africa about how to achieve this. And I see the relationship with development banks is also at the forefront of that. Talk to me a little bit more about how African economies can address high growth linked to commodity cycles, not just broad industrialization.
So no, the first thing is to recognize that the traditional way of financing is declining, and so Africa needs to mobilize its own domestic resources. And the way we think about that in terms of various levels. So, for example, leveraging natural resource wealth to support domestic development priorities, tapping on diaspora, especially the diaspora capital and diaspora philanthropy, and modernizing the payment systems that we have in Africa in order to lower cost and boost formality, improving sovereign credit ratings, because this is important to expand financing options, and also strengthening the efficiency of health spending in public elsewhere, which has been some of the key issues with the development aid cuts.
And just in terms of the payment systems, where are we in terms of accelerating the digital infrastructure for this?
We have a chapter that discusses that in Foresight, and we are looking at how, for example, tokenization can be used to increase development financing, especially for small and medium-sized enterprises in Africa, how the central bank mechanism can incorporate the central bank digital currency, and also how AI and technology and new emerging technology in general can be incorporated in providing relevant solutions for this context.
And just in terms of the youth population, what role should they be playing, and how can leaders strengthen regional ties to unblock local demand and supply?
So you're asking a question that our chapter 2 is really focusing on human development and human capital and quality job for youth, because we look at the demographic transition as a central thread that we are discussing in this report. We look at the demography as something that could either be a workforce dividend, or it could deepen fragility if actions, appropriate actions are not taken. But when you look at it in terms of risk, you look at the potential of widening the gap between the labor force in trend and the quality of employment. You look at high vulnerability to instability where opportunity are limited, and also loss of productivity, especially for wealth creation. But when you look at it from the positive side, you look tremendous opportunities. For example, if both investment in education, health, and skills are created, if policies that expand quality jobs and also especially across the corridor, and the possibility of creating job as skills. And finally, if you look at how we can create a clear focus, put a clear focus on youth pathway to productive work as well. So we are looking at that as both a risk, but also a tremendous opportunity that can be leveraged if appropriate policies are implemented.
Well, thank you so much for speaking to us, and I do hope that we will have a lengthier, more substantive conversation at a later stage when we do have time. Thank you so much for your time, Professor Pierre Nguimkeu, who is a director of Brookings Africa Growth Initiative.